Good evening and welcome to Tamworth Borough Council's meeting this evening. I'll start this meeting with a minute's silence for former councillors and mayors Ken Gant, Terry Dix and Jack Davis. He was a consort of the former mayor Irene Davis. Shall we have a stand for a minute's silence, please? Thank you. Please be seated. Does anybody wish to say anything at this stage? Councillor Jeremy Oates.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if I may just pay tribute to the people who just stood in silence too. Jack Davis was obviously before my time involved in politics, but growing up in a political household, I was very much aware of this tall Yorkshireman with a beaming smile. When he moved to Tamworth and was married, as we know, to Irene Davis, who led this council in the 80s and was also mayor in the 80s. He was a keen rugby player and involved in Tamworth Rugby Club. And the year that Irene Davis was mayor, the rugby club took great pleasure in referring to him as the mayoress of Tamworth. And that sort of ribbing that we can just imagine Jack smiling to. He was an active and involved member of the Civic Society as well, and knew many, many people. I had the privilege to represent you, Mr. Mayor, at his funeral, and can say it was not just standing room only. There was a large number of people unable to get into the church. Such was the popularity of Jack Davis. And if we could just say a thank you to the support he gave Irene when she was leader of the council and also when she was mayor of this borough. If I may, Mr. Mayor, I'll move on to Ken Gant. Again, I don't remember a time when I didn't know Ken. I remember canvassing for him and knocking up in his election in 1992 with yourself and on the streets around the Perrycroft estate. Now, Ken served the people of Tamworth initially on the county council for 8 years and later on the borough for 18. He was always passionate about representing those in need and always took an active role in the health agenda, representing Tamworth on health scrutiny at the borough and also at the county. Ken was a real people person and built relationships. And one thing that we always knew from Ken was how much he cared, not just about the people in his community, but also about council staff. If there was ever a member of staff being criticised or going through a tough time, Ken was always the one that would step up and say, we need to look after that person, and always supported the staff of the council. Outside the council, Ken was passionate about his military service and would often tell stories about his time in Egypt. This service led to a lifetime of work for the Royal British Legion and the Poppy Appeal. I remember when I was first elected, Ken and I were part of the class of 2000, when a number of us got first elected onto the council. And we walked into the members' room together for the first time after the election. His face immediately dropped. He marched across the room in the way that Ken did, straight up to the bookcases at the back where the members' library is, put his hand on top of the bookcase and lifted a face-down photo frame. He knew immediately what it was. No one else in the room did. It was a simple certificate congratulating the council on a bumper year of poppy collection, and the fact that it was face down on top of a bookcase infuriated Ken, and I think that summed up the passion he had for the subject. Maybe it was Ken's character, or maybe it was military service, but for me, Ken always had this competitive nature, especially at mayor making, at civic balls and at Remembrance Day. And often he would stand there with other mayors, particularly with the then leader of the then leader and former leader of the council, Peter Seekings, and compare how polished somebody's shoes were or how sharp the crease was in the front of their trousers. Now, it wasn't just about being competitive. It was about Ken's utter respect for the position, whether he was mayor or a councillor, that he held, and respect for the occasion he was at, whether it was Remembrance Day or a mayoral duty or whatever. It was about that respect and about when you turn up at these events, you turn up and you look the part. And he was passionate about that. Ken fought for the people of Spittal Ward and prior to that Perrycroft's division in Tamworth for many years, and I think we can all be grateful for the contribution that Ken made to this council and to Tamworth over those years. If I may, Mr. Mayor, I'll move on to former councillor Terry Dix. I was privileged at a recent council meeting to congratulate Terry on receiving the Federal Cross of Germany, and I commented on how rare we have the opportunity to congratulate people while they are still with us. Following that, a number of members of the press got in touch with me, and I forwarded Terry's details, and they spoke to Terry and ran the story in the press. I also had an opportunity to speak to Terry about that press coverage and about the comments that had been made about his award to him. And Pat was particularly positive, saying it's really nice to hear positive comments. We don't always get them in a political world. It turns out that was the last time I spoke to Terry. But since his passing, I don't know if people are aware of this, a couple of days after he passed, Pat and Terry received a telegram from the Queen for their 60th wedding anniversary, something I didn't even know existed. So a really nice thing. It's just a pity Terry wasn't able to receive that before he passed away. Now, Terry was a number of things to a number of people, or to everybody. I had the privilege of knowing him as a family member, but also knowing him as working on both the Borough Council and the County Council. He was leader of the County Council when I was leader of the Borough Council the first time round. And he taught me a significant lesson. And it was pretty much when to keep your mouth shut. We sat there talking about enhanced two-tier working. How topical. And I sat at a Leaders' Chief Execs meeting, and I wasn't happy with the way the situation was going and was trying to find a way out. And I indicated to speak and said, I'm not sure I can make this decision. I need to go back to my cabinet to try and buy time. Terry just looked at me from the chairman's position and said, I'm making this decision as leader of my council. How you run your council is your problem, but I'm here to make decisions. So I very quickly shut up. I won't keep you too much longer, Mr. Mayor, but just pick up a couple of highlights. And that was some of Terry's proudest moments, according to his family, were when he walked across the upper lawn of the castle grounds with the Queen at the opening of Ankerside, and also when he walked across that same lawn with Prince Charles at the inauguration of the Mercian Regiment. And if I may just share an anecdote, Prince Charles came over with Terry Dix, or was introduced to Terry Dix, sorry, and it was simple. This is Terry Dix, he's leader of the Staffordshire County Council. And Terry turned to Prince Charles and said, this is Michael Oates, he's Mayor of Tamworth and also my brother-in-law. This is Mary Oates, she's Mayoress and my sister. And this is Jeremy Oates, he's leader of the Borough Council and also my nephew. Prince Charles leant in and said, it's a bit incestuous in Tamworth, isn't it? My mother's comments to Prince Charles will remain secret. But no, I think in politics we all agree and disagree, and we all do our best with the information we've got at hand at the time. But I think we can all agree that Terry was a giant in politics in Staffordshire and Tamworth. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Oates. Councillor Cook, Daniel Cook.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think a lot of what I wish to say has been stolen by Councillor Jeremy Oates because they were the correct things to say. I'd just like to make a couple of comments. Obviously, I can't speak about Jack Davis. Unfortunately, I never met the gentleman, so yeah, but certainly spoke to Irene a few times, and I'm sure all our thoughts go out to Irene at this time. Speaking about Ken Gant, obviously I was leader of this council for a long time while Ken was a councillor. And I'll reassure the room and the public, Ken was not afraid to let the leader of the council know when something wasn't right in Spittal. He let you know very aggressively and it needed fixing very, very quickly. But he didn't do it publicly. He didn't try and catch you out publicly. He'd make time to come and see you, explain the problem, and if you didn't get your backside in gear and get onto it, you soon knew about it. Ken would not let it go. He was ferocious in fighting for the residents he served. And I'll always respect Ken for that. Just as an anecdote, obviously, as Councillor Oates said about the rugby club and Jack Davis calling him the mayoress, on the 2 times Maureen Gant was mayor of this town, I took great pleasure in calling Ken Gant. Of course, the term should have been the mayor's consort, and for those 2 years I used to lovingly call him the mayor's concubine, at which point he'd chased me round and round the council chamber several times, doing probably the most energy he'd had in years. But he was always good spirit, good laugh. And I think all of us now, if we stop and think, can just about hear that infectious laugh of Ken's. It's something you just never, ever forget. If you wanted to know where the issues were in Tamworth and the charities that needed help, you'd find Ken Gant right in the middle of it, right there helping out. He helped everybody, every charity, every group, whenever he could. And he's a sad loss to this town, Mr. Mayor. Speaking about former councillor Terry Dix, same as what Councillor Oates said, was taught a great lesson by Terry. I remember first being elected in 2004, a young man in my 20s, full of blood and thunder, thinking socialists and the Labour Party needed grinding into the dust. And it was Terry Dix that taught me to calm down, open my eyes and realise, actually, it's just ideology. We all see things a little different, but we all want the same outcome, the best for the residents of Tamworth and Staffordshire. And he was one of those that did calm me down and taught me to open my eyes, focus and see that it's not always about that ideology. And it gave me great pleasure to second the nomination for Terry to become Freedom of the Borough, which obviously Councillor Simon People moved. I remember at the presentation, myself and Councillor Simon People giving 2 speeches about Terry, and they were really heartfelt. And I'll finish on this one, Mr. Mayor, and it's an anecdote myself and Councillor Oates have shared for years. If you go to the top floor of Marmion House and stare to the south, you see Phil Dix's houses and you see Terry Dix's roads. Terry Dix mattered to this town massively, and this town would be completely different if he had not existed. So, again, thoughts, I hope, go out from all councillors to those families. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Councillor Mrs Clements.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's really difficult to sum up nearly 30 years of friendship. Ken was a man of integrity, honesty, and was a loving, caring person who did so much for so many people within the Tamworth. I met Ken when I first moved over to Tamworth and we became good friends. When I went through my divorce and became a single mum, him and his wife Maureen helped out so many times with my daughter Kirsty, for which I will be forever grateful. When I met my husband Simon, him and Ken got on so well, they had the same sense of humour, very dry. We took Ken to Weston for a day trip after he had a bout of illness, and like the stubborn man he could be, he refused to have a wheelchair or a scooter, so we spent most of the time sitting on benches for him to rest. We didn't moan because this was Ken's day and he was happy. He loved a Toby roast, and we spent many birthdays and celebrations at Shenston enjoying a meal. To lose Terry just a week after hit very hard. Terry had been the president of our twinning association, of which I am now chair. He was a school governor for 50 years at Wilnecote High School, which is where I first met him as a parent governor. He was chairman of the Wilnecote Royal British Legion, of which I'm a member. Terry, like Ken, did so much for the community of Tamworth and the wider Staffordshire. They were both men for the people. Both will be sorely missed, but Tamworth is a richer place for having them both.
Thank you, Councillor Clement. Councillor Dr Simon People.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I only intend to respond briefly. I had the honour to nominate both these gentlemen for freeman of the borough, and the reason I was happy to do it in both cases was that they had made a major contribution to the town, but above all that they loved their town. I'm one of those who's come here as an adult and made it my home. They grew so fond of the place, they made it. You just felt every time you met them that the focus of their thinking and existence was Tamworth, albeit Terry had to then take the wider view of Staffordshire as well. But it was always Staffordshire with Tamworth at the centre. And I think we're all very mindful that these men stood out because they reached across, and it's been alluded to tonight. It didn't matter that Ken and I were in different political groups. He was a gentleman first, and gentleman second, and gentleman every time. And Terry had that ability, as Councillor Oates and Councillor Cook have mentioned already, to reach out to those who didn't necessarily agree with him, but who he was going to work with because that was what suited the town. And all I can say is that when I referred in the Herald to it being the end of an era with the loss of Terry, if you go back, as was mentioned by Councillor Cook, Councillor Phil Dix was the leader here, Councillor Terry Dix was the leader there. Both of those men were men who were passionate about the future of Tamworth. And the big thing for us to do, for all of them, is to carry that forward by putting Tamworth and its interests before our own personal preferences. And as to Jack, can I just say this? I got to know Irene in the years after she was on the council, and I know how much she valued him. And with the exception of myself and Councillor Daniel Cook, whose spouses are actually here with us, the reality for all of us is that we rely on that person at home, that person who might be at meetings with us, might not be at meetings with us, to be there. And Jack made it possible for Irene to serve the town too. So in remembering him, we remember all those who, in an unspoken way, have served the town by helping someone more prominent. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Doctor. I won't say anything. I did omit to say, to let you know that this is being filmed and broadcast, this meeting is. Thank you. We'll go on to item 1. Apologies for absence. I've got apologies from Councillors A. Cooper, B. Price and M. Bailey. Do we know of any more apologies? That would be it. Thank you. Item 2, to receive the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of September 2010. Councillor Simon People. Dr. Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to move the minutes.
Thank you. Councillor Jeremy Oates.
Happy to second the minutes, and we'll be quicker next time.
Thank you. Is it your wish I can sign the minutes as a true record? Please show. Please show those against. I think it's been approved that I sign the minutes, which I don't know where they are. We'll get them later, I'll do it later, thank you. Item 3, any declarations of interest? I'll take the silence as, no, there isn't. Item 4, to receive any announcements from the Mayor, Leader, members of the Cabinet or the Chief Executive. I've made my announcement. I believe the Chief Executive has an announcement to make.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to inform Council formally that on the 2nd of December I received resignation with immediate effect from Mr. Paul Brindley. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that. It's okay. I believe the Leader, Councillor Jeremy Oates, has an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I do have an announcement to make. It has been nearly 7 months now since the council AGM, and I've worked with the with the Cabinet since then. During that time, I've watched the Cabinet members working, listened to their interests, and looked at the skills and what they bring to the table. Also, since that time, a number of the projects and pieces of work that we are doing as a council have changed in terms of their stage and where we are at with those. So with this in mind, Mr. Mayor, I have made some changes to the Cabinet and the Cabinet's responsibilities, which will come into effect tomorrow morning. I have literally at the start of this meeting passed an envelope to the Leader of the Opposition, who is now opening it, and I've also informed the Chief Exec of these changes.
And the winner is?
So the Leader's portfolio, there are some minor amendments to which move member and democratic services into that portfolio, and also there's the removal of corporate risk from my portfolio, which is I'm delegating to another member of the Cabinet. And you'll see in that list, Mr. Mayor, that the Reset and Recovery Programme now refers to all Cabinet members being on the board and responsible for their relevant elements. Moving on, the next portfolio change is a creation of a slightly different portfolio, and that is for environment, entertainment and leisure. This will sit with the current Deputy Leader, Councillor Rob Pritchard. This includes the TIC, litter and car park enforcement, street scene, cemeteries, community leisure and sport, public toilets, nature reserves, parks and play, entertainment, which covers the assembly rooms, the castle operation, outdoor events, arts, culture, heritage experience and street markets, sport development, tourism destination Tamworth, town centre car parks, HRA green spaces, as we changed in May, again that reset and recovery, and the responsibility for the climate change agenda relating to that portfolio. The next portfolio is now entitled the Portfolio for Finance, Risk and Customer Services. This sits with Councillor Marie Bailey. So finance is in there, treasury management, procurement, audit and governance, corporate risk management is an addition which I've delegated. Also future high street fund with a responsibility specifically for finance and risk. And with that comes a seat on the future high street fund board. So Marie will now sit with me on that board and look at the finance and risk elements specifically, because that's where her skill set is. Property management, investment, general fund repairs, commercial portfolio, property portfolio, asset management, revenues and bends, land charges, legal right to buy, customer services and insight, information management, GDPR and ombudsman. You will notice that disabled facilities grants no longer sits in Councillor Bailey's portfolio, and that has been moved elsewhere. And again, I've already commented on the reset and recovery and climate change elements. This brings me on to the portfolio which is now named Homelessness Prevention and Social Housing. This will continue to sit with Councillor Alex Farrell, but now specifically includes the role of Chairman of the Shadow Housing Committee until that is formalised in the Constitution next year. The rest remains as is, with the addition of disabled facilities grants and disabled facilities adaptations. They're the private sector and the HRA equivalent of the disabled facilities grants. And again, reset and recovery and climate change. The other two portfolios, you'll see there is some significant change. The first one is the portfolio for skills, planning, economy and waste, and that is to sit with Councillor Stephen Doyle. Steve Doyle retains the planning elements of his old portfolio, but takes on heritage asset management and upkeep, dry recycling disposal contract, waste management, joint waste management board at LDC, economic and business development, general regeneration opportunities, education, educational attainment, career skills and training, and also the reset and recovery and climate change. The thinking behind the movement of the dry recyclate is we are now at a stage where decisions have been made and it's about implementation, and that fits Steve Dawes' skill set. And in terms of the education and skills, now being made more prominent in the portfolio title and in that remit, and that's about post-16 skills and retraining, and that's something that I know Councillor Doyle is passionate about. And finally, Mr Mayor, the final portfolio for this evening is the voluntary sector, town centre, evening economy and community safety. And the significant addition there is the town centre relationships and the evening economy. Councillor Cook is good at relationships and good at building relationships and politicking, and I believe we need to do something in terms of that going forward with the town centre. And separately, there's a project in there around the evening economy. We've also married that up with the taxi licensing and licensing portfolio. So Councillor Cook now takes on environmental health, licensing, corporate health and safety, taxi licensing, PCC engagement, community safety, corporate antisocial behaviour strategy, safeguarding, environmental health enforcement, community wardens and CCTV. And like I said with the other ones, takes on the responsibilities within the Reset and Recovery Programme and the climate change for that portfolio. So that is an update on the changes I've made to Cabinet, which will come into effect as of tomorrow. And if I could request that the Chief Exec updates the outside bodies list accordingly with those positions that are appointed by portfolio. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Item. I've gone wrong. Oh, sorry. We're going at item 5, question time. To answer questions from members of the public pursuant to procedure rule number 10. Mr Hugh Huxton, Mr Hugh Loxton, question to Councillor J. Oates. If not in attendance, Mr Barrett will read the question. Mr Loxton is not present, so Mr Barrett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I have a question from Mr Hugh Loxton to the Leader of the Council. In July 2020, the Audit and Governance Committee decided to proceed with the process to appoint up to 2 independent members to the said committee. Could you please provide an update of what steps have been taken since then to appoint said independent members, what is currently being done, and the timescale for when those appointments will be made? Thank you.
Councillor Jeremy Oates.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The question that Mr Loxton asks relates to the decision of the Audit and Governance Committee in July 2020. The Audit and Governance Committee operates independently of Cabinet and so made this decision itself, didn't make any recommendation to Cabinet or Council. So as a result, the Audit and Governance Committee is responsible for the process of recruiting any independent members to sit on that committee. Now, as with all committees now, they are broadcast live. They are broadcast on the internet, and they're forever. So the information and discussions that have happened around this are available publicly. But I would suggest that it'd probably be advised that Mr Loxton makes contact with Councillor Martin Summers, who is the chair of the Audit and Governance Committee, for an update on this matter.
Thank you, Councillor Oates. Now to questions from members of the Council in pursuance of procedure rule number 11. Dr Simon People to question from Mr Jeremy Oates. Councillor Jeremy Oates.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As the GBS LEP's latest report shows that unemployment in Tamworth is the highest amongst Staffordshire districts and rising, what is Tamworth Borough Council going to do to assist local people to find work?
Councillor Oates.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Whilst the report that Councillor People refers to was accurate at the time. The latest updated information suggests that unemployment and universal credit claimants are actually dropping in Tamworth, albeit by a small amount. Based on experience and previous challenges, Tamworth has traditionally had a high fluctuation of unemployment initially when there is a challenge, but recovers quickly. Indication seems to show that this is the case currently, with Tamworth having the third best improvement in universal credit claimant numbers in Staffordshire. Unemployment in Tamworth currently estimated at around 4% of those economically active, which is below the West Midlands and Great Britain. However, just being below doesn't necessarily mean it's fantastic, does it? Universal credit, Tamworth is looking at currently 4.5% claimant rate, which has dropped from 6% in October 2020. So there's approximately 700 people difference there. With regards assisting local people to find work, the borough currently plays a significant role in coordinating and ensuring that partners with the responsibility for the area are well connected, and particularly that involves the Job Centre Plus. Also, Employment Skills Board, both the LEPs are involved and other agencies are involved with the Department of Work and Pensions on that one. I'm just making departments up. Funding from the GBS LEP for this project is available in Tamworth Borough till the end of March 2022, and that provides officer support for an operation covering the Southern Staffordshire Employment and Skills Board. And this board comprises of leading individuals from business, local authority, education and trading providers with the purpose of identifying skills and opportunities for employment, ultimately aiming at reducing unemployment areas. Now, Tamworth Borough Council plays a central role in this board in directing and identifying opportunities and connecting those opportunities for jobs and training for local businesses and building key relationships with stakeholders and employers in Tamworth. Very recently, Mr Mayor, I think you may have attended this, Job 22 opened in Ankside as part of a 3-year project to proactively support those furthest away from the labour market and get them into work. And through Tamworth Borough Council's Employed Skills Officer, the Council is able to actively promote the activities of Job 22 and use local intelligence to make those connections. Tamworth Borough Council is also part of the Mercia Park Employment Action Group for the Mercia Park development, which is at junction 11 of the M42. And through the Employment and Skills Board I referred to earlier, they promoted opportunities that are there, such as the recruitment fair, training opportunities that have been running on site, and also encouraging local schools and colleges to make use of the free facilities for local students to get a feel for what it's like to work on a construction site. So there are a few examples, Mr Mayor, as to how the Borough Council is involved in projects which are around getting people back into work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor People, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, Mr Mayor. Thank the leader for his long and detailed response, which managed to avoid the words signposting, which one might have otherwise encountered quite a lot. Would the leader agree with me that if he wants to answer a question about what the council is going to do, then it would be good to focus on that? Would it also be better to focus on unemployment? The stats that I quoted were actually only a week and a half old from their publication, so I'm not sure how easy it is for anybody to know what else we can judge it by on this claimed drop in UC claimants, which is a very different thing to whether people are back in work properly. So could I ask the leader in future to ask officers of the council what they can do, for example, by increasing the amount of local value put into council contracts, which has not happened enough in the past. We were told it was down to Europe, and now it isn't. So can you pick up on that and other methods for finding the best possible route for giving people work experience, because one of the biggest hurdles that many people face at the moment is they haven't got work experience to demonstrate, and the council could do more to do that. So I ask him to arrange to see me to discuss those ideas. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Dr. Simon People, I believe you have another question. Sorry, Councillor Oates, do you want to answer that
I was
question?
going to say, Mr. Mayor,
As Council People knows, I'm more than happy to meet him and discuss matters. The figures I referred to are actually dated the 13th, so these are figures that came out yesterday, so that's the latest update. In terms of what we can do directly as a council and local value, and Councillor People refers to the procurement rules that we operated with, particularly when we're part of Europe. Members will be aware that the Future High Street Fund project does have a number of targets in there for local value in terms of tendering and in terms of the people finally doing construction or whatever part of the project they're involved with, that local value does appear in those terms and in that offer. So we have listened and we've built that into that particular project itself. But yeah, I'm more than happy to meet Council People and we can have a more full discussion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Oates. Councillor Dr. Simon People, I believe you have a second question.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following this announcement today, which was Thursday when this was submitted, the Tamworth Borough Council is supporting the bid for a county deal for Staffordshire. Would the leader of the council explain to members what evidence he has that this will enhance the delivery of services for Tamworth residents?
Councillor Jeremy Oates.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor People, for the question on this exciting matter. This county deal, this collaboration, is not just about the delivery services, it's also about tackling some of the wider issues and national issues at a local level that may have an impact on Tamworth. And it's important to remember that this deal is still in its very early stages and we are still discussing a lot of detail at a high level and down into the minutiae. So the deal is about collaboration. And what I can say is we have a proven track record of working together. We have informal discussions and partnerships. We have formal discussions and partnerships with our neighbouring authorities in terms of South Staffs and Lichfield, to name two. And we also have regular discussions and partnership working formally and informally with the County Council. In terms of the evidence and examples that Councillor People referred to, one example of how we've really stepped up and worked together is whilst other entities have been struggling to get their story straight, as it were, with the pandemic, the districts and county council in Staffordshire have all stood together, meeting on a regular basis, weekly or fortnightly, depending on when or what stage of the pandemic we've been at the time, and working with community groups to make sure we protected the most vulnerable and supported those in local need. Notable successes include the supply of food parcels and support for the most vulnerable in the communities, early support and distribution of PPE for care providers, and targeting of hotspot areas. And you will have already received my updates on the hotspot areas as we went through different stages of the pandemic, and I still send updates out as and when. And they were really driven by that collaborative working at the Local Outbreak Control Board, where all the districts got together and looked at tackling a single issue, districts and county, tackling a single issue in a collective partnership way. There are other examples, Mr. Mayor, around job opportunities across the county, around town centre regeneration, and that's reimagining and reshaping our high streets and town centres. And you'll know that Tamworth has the Future High Street Fund and the support that came through working with others and the county in achieving that. The big one in terms of collaboration as an evidence base is waste and recycling. Staffordshire, collaboratively with the districts and the county, are in a situation where we have zero waste to landfill. All the waste that's generated in Staffordshire is either reused, recycled, or recovered or turned into energy at the Four Ashes plant. This only happened because of that collaborative work. So we know we can work together. We have a good track record and a solid foundation. And that track record and foundation is built on a two-tier system. Now, I have plenty of other things to say, but we'll finish on in terms of this first answer is, we must remember this deal, this offer, is about a two-tier system and not about any other opportunity for whatever governance structure may come down the line in terms of the government's devolution suggestions next year. This is about two-tier, it's about building a relationship, it's about officially working together, and it's about putting an argument and a case together to allow us to continue as a two-tier and not face any threats like we've had for the last 40 years about a unitary or whatever else in terms of local reorganisation. This is about keeping our sovereignty, it's about keeping our decisions in Tamworth, and it's about drawing extra powers and extra finance down from London to make decisions locally that affect people locally and tackle local and national issues, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dr Simon People, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I thank the leader for his detailed response? Sometimes these exchanges are designed to be combative. Councillor Jeremy Oates and I share a view that a two-tier, well-worked system is actually the right one, and therefore I wanted the council as a whole to hear what the issues are about. Would he therefore take back to the leaders' meeting the fact that Tamworth and no doubt other boroughs, but districts, will be keeping a close eye on what this means, because what we want is real opportunities to deliver more for the local people, as we so eloquently spoke about earlier on. And in particular, I'm keen to see that the skills agenda that's been devolved to mayoral authorities would also get devolved here, and therefore give us a chance to address the needs of local people, not on some one-size-fits-all basis, but on the basis of local need. And so I asked the leader to take those points back, because this will be a debate that will go on long after tonight, but I wanted the issues out there. So can I thank the leader and ask him to take those points back to the leaders' meeting?
Councillor Jeremy Oates.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Whilst I welcome the discussions and the progress we're making on the county deal, I will always be the first to jump up at the leaders and chief execs meeting if I'm not happy with something, or if there's a suggestion that this would take anything away from us as a borough council in Tamworth or any of the other districts. So yes, I'm more than happy to feed back. I'm more than happy to feed back, particularly that Councillor People has asked me these questions in public, and therefore it's not just about the leaders around in the room, it's about the rest of the councils and the other elected members keeping an eye on things and making that challenge. In reference to the specific point around skills, there are a number of priorities that the county deal focuses on: climate change, social care, workforce and logistics. But the key powers from government that we are currently seeking is to allow us access to devolved investment funds for growth, devolved powers for funding for post-16 skills. And that's the one that Councillor People particularly raised. This is for us is about being able to behave and compete on an even keel with elected mayors and Mets and those that have already got devolved powers. And the other responsibility that we're particularly pushing for in terms of seeking powers is the responsibility for single devolved transport budget and powers to develop integrated transport networks. The whole thing for us is about having a Staffordshire County and district offer that rivals the Manchesters, the Birminghams of the world, in terms of the powers that they have available to them. And we believe we should have those same powers available to us, rather than Whitehall making the decisions and telling us how transport should work in Staffordshire.
Thank you, Councillor Oates. Now we'll move on to item 6, Treasury Management Strategy, Statement and Annual Investment Strategy, Mid-Year Review Report 2021-22. Thank you. I believe Councillor Marie Bailey, who is absent, so I'll call upon Councillor Jeremy Oates.
Yes, Mr Mayor, unfortunately Councillor Bailey sent her apologies this afternoon. One of the opportunities that being a leader has is it allows you to build a cabinet around you with the skills that you sadly lack, and also delegate things. So in this moment, I'm delegating this report to someone who's way more experienced in presenting these, and actually thought he'd retired from these a few months ago. So I'd ask Councillor Rob Pritchard to take this report to Council.
Councillor Robert Pritchard.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is excellent news for members, because we all know the highlight of any Christmas council meeting is a finance report from myself. So it's nice to see some of the traditions carrying on, and members have all had their Christmas wish come early. The report presents to members the mid-year review of the Treasury Management Strategy, Statement and Annual Investment Strategy. The report complies with the requirements of the SIPFA Code of Practice on Treasury Management, reporting Treasury activity to members at least twice a year. The Council has complied with the Professionals' Codes, Guidance and Statutes. There are no issues to report with non-compliance with the actual approved prudential indicators. The investment portfolio yield, excluding property fund returns, for the first 6 months of the year is 0.26%, compared with a three-month LIBID benchmark rate of minus 0.043. And this reflects the continuing low interest rate environment. The aim of the report is to inform members of the investment management issues, to enable all members to have ownership and understanding when making decisions on Treasury management matters. Training on Treasury management issues was delivered for members in November, with all training on the corporate capital strategy in February, and further training is planned for February 2022. The approved limits for the annual investment strategy have not been breached during the 6 months to September 21. The report also includes a brief update with regard to our property investment funds, and the Council is requested to approve the Treasury Management Strategy and Actual Investment Strategy Mid-Year Report 21-22. Happy to take any questions, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Now move on to questions. I'll take it from the silence. Sorry, Daniel Cook, Councillor Cook, sorry about that, mate. I've got your name down on me.
I was going to second, Mr Mayor, so it depends if there's any questions.
Thank you. Right, we'll now move on to questions. Sorry, go on, Danny.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think, as we've been through, a year and a half to 2 years of pandemics and changes to circumstances, sometimes I recall that sometimes our traditions are all we have. And I've always been fundamentally aware, until Councillor Pritchard has bored me into a coma with a finance report at Christmas Council, I can't put my Christmas tree up. So thank you, Councillor Pritchard, for giving us this report tonight. I can now put my Christmas tree up. Of course, I joke, Mr Mayor, it's an incredibly essential report. As Councillor Pritchard rightly points out, we've met all our prudential indicators. Certainly like to add on, congratulations to the officers again for some sterling work through the year on Treasury Management, and happy to second the report, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to questions. No questions? I'm sorry.
Let's go back to Rob. He needs to move.
Go on, Councillor Robert Pritchard.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In the absence of questions, then I'll move the report formally.
No, we've got it. Okay. Councillor Simon People, Dr Simon People.
Mr Mayor, the report was discussed in detail at Audit and Governance, and as has been indicated by Councillor Cook, the staff were to be congratulated in the view of the committee, and so I look forward to, in this circumstance, proposing we move to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Do we have a mover? We do. And a seconder. Is there any debate?
Mr Mayor.
I'm sorry, I can't see.
Obviously, I may not be right, but that was what I did. And I think procedurally that means that now needs to be a vote on the report.
So what do I go to vote?
You need to take a vote.
Yes, no.
On Simon People's proposal to go straight to the vote.
We'll go for a vote on the proposal from Dr. Simon People. All those in favour? Can somebody help me here? All those against? So Dr. Simon People's proposal is carried. Now what do I?
So the vote.
Now the vote on the report. All those in favour? All those against? The report is carried. The vote is carried. Thank you. That, yeah. Item 7 on the agenda, Local Council Tax Reduction Scheme 2022 to 2023. To receive the report of the portfolio holder, Finance and Customer Service Councillor Marie Bailey, who is absent, so I'll call upon Councillor Jeremy Oates. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As with the previous item, I will delegate this to Councillor Rob Pritchard, as he's brought this through Council since we started doing this a couple of years ago.
Thank you. Councillor Pritchard?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The members' Christmas presents continues as we have another financial report from myself. As all members will know, we have in the past wanted to move to a banding scheme with council tax reduction, and that's been discussed by several committees for council and corporate scrutiny. However, in the light of the pandemic, we've pushed that that move off. Again, we're proposing to push that move off again this year and keep the scheme as is for the coming financial year, and hope we can again look at that when things have settled down after the pandemic. So I'm happy to take any questions, Mr Mayor.
We have a mover and a second. Do we have any questions of anybody? No, I can't see.
Back to Councillor Pritchard.
Who?
Back to Councillor Pritchard.
Yeah, thanks. Then back to Councillor Robert Pritchard. I'm making a mess of this tonight.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. If there are no questions, I'll move the recommendation. It's recommendation 2 in the report. Thank you.
Just looking for a seconder. Councillor, I've lost his name. Thomas J, sorry. It's these masks they're throwing me. Councillor Thomas J. It's not just that, I'm confused anyway. Does anybody want to debate anything? I'll take that as a no, then we'll move to the vote. All those in favour? Sorry. All those, anybody against? I think that was unanimous. Thank you. Item 8, the appointment of an external auditor, re-accounts commencing 2023 to 2024. To receive the report of the portfolio holder for Finance and Customer Services, Councillor Marie Bailey, who is absent, I'll call upon Councillor Jeremy Oates.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. One of the great things about this Cabinet is the teamwork, and when members found out that Councillor Bailey couldn't make it this evening, a number of them, 2, volunteered to take her reports. So Councillor Steve Doyle will be taking this one, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And to give Rob a rest, appointments of external auditors. The report advises members of the options, process and legislative requirements to appoint external auditors for the accounting periods for 2023 to 2024 for 5 years, and seeks member endorsement of the recommended option for subsequent Cabinet and Council approval. Local authorities are required under legislation to appoint their own external auditors for the accounts from 2023 to 2024, as mentioned, when the current contract expires, and this decision has to be made by full council. The Local Audit and Accountability Act of 2014 requires local authorities to decide between two options which are contained within the report. A decision to become an opted-in authority must be taken in accordance with regulations and by the full council. If we decide to join the scheme, we must inform PSAA by returning the form of acceptance no later than midnight the 11th of March 2022. The LGA has provided further information, and this is attached to the report as Appendix 1. This provides detailed arguments in respect of the procurement exercise which applied in 2017. So the recommendations are that members endorse. First, the Cabinet recommends to Council that the authority opts into the appointing persons arrangement made by Public Sector Audit Appointments, PSAA, which I mentioned earlier, for the appointment of external auditors, and that the Executive Director of Finance confirms our interest in undertaking the opt-in appointing process following ratification by Council, and has delegated powers in relation to the appointing process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dorman. Now has anybody any questions to ask? Councillor Dr. Simon People.
I was actually indicating to second it, Mr. Mayor. We discussed it at Audit and Governance, and it was what I think somebody referred to as a no-brainer as to which option to pick. So I would happily endorse the proposal. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So the motion is Councillor Stephen Dorr.
So I move the motion to Council, or motions to Council.
And the seconder, Councillor Jeremy Oates, was it?
All right, I'll do it now.
Dr. Simon People, sorry.
No.
Does anybody want to debate this? I'm glad you're close.
I hope not.
Okay. I'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please. So, I think it's unanimous, but I'll ask anybody against. Thank you. The motion is carried. Thank you. Can I go to sleep for 5 minutes and come back again? Right. Item 9. Exclusion of the press and public. That in accordance with the provisions of the local authorities, executive arrangements, meeting and access to information, England, Regulations 2012, Section 100A, brackets 4 brackets, of the Local Government Act 1972. The press and public be excluded from the meeting during the consideration of the following business on grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 3, 4 and 5 of Part 1 of Schedule 21A to the Act, and the public interest in withholding the information outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information to be made public. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Jeremy Oates. Can I have a seconder? I've got several. Councillor Robert Pritchard. Can I have a show of hands? All those who support the motion? Is anybody against? I think that's unanimous. Councillor Jeremy Oates, you have something to say?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. As you've just announced that the press and public will have to leave the meeting now, I'd just like to very sneakily completely abuse the rules and wish my fellow councillors, yourself, Mr. Mayor, and the public a very happy, merry and safe Christmas, and wish them all the best for the new year, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I jump on the bandwagon and say I agree with those principles? They apply to what I've got to say. So I can thank everybody who's watching, and I'll now close the public section of the meeting.